got a couple of jazz players here with me, Draa Hobbs and John Stowell. They play. How do you describe what you play? Cool jazz? Just jazz?
Labels, that's kind of tricky. I wouldn't exactly call it cool jazz, although we like some of those musicians from that school like Chet Baker, Jerry Mulligan. That's not exactly what we do, but it's not exactly hard bop either. It's kind of its own version of modern jazz, I would guess. Contrapuntal, interactive.
Yeah, interactive is the word that comes to my mind, too.
Conversational. People who play
Argumentative.
If we're having a bad day. But people who play in this style that we like are people like Jim Hall. Dre was a good friend of Attila Zoller, who spent some years here and helped get the Vermont Jazz Center going in Brattleboro. And we both like this kind of conversational approach to playing the music. Bill Evans played in this style also. So it kind of straddles categories. It's not really from one particular style of jazz.
You know, let's just do a song instead of trying to describe it. What should we open with?
A song from the great Brazilian composer Antonio Carlos Jobim, Tom Jobim, and it's called Brigas Nunca Mais, which means fight no more.
That was a tremendous song and a tremendous performance. Is there a backstory to this?
Well, just that we both like Brazilian music, and we're on sort of a small mission to introduce a few other musicians to some songs from Jobim. He wrote 400 songs, and jazz musicians have been collaborating with him and playing his music since he began his career in the mid-'50s and had quite a bit of success here in the States. And I think we get a little lazy sometimes in terms of repertoire. So many musicians, jazz musicians, will play 4 or 5 of his songs, like Girl from Ipanema, some of your listeners might know, or maybe Wave or How Insensitive. Those are all great tunes. But the same 4 or 5 come up every time you say, let's play something from Tom Jobim. And Dre and I both like to look for more obscure material, not just of that realm of bossa nova and samba. So I'm probably up to 10 or 12 Jobim tunes, but there are a few more I'd like to learn for sure. Dre and I probably play half a dozen together, I would guess.
Yeah, and I'm in a position. I have my own repertoire, but I'm very fortunate when a great musician like John comes into the area. He travels the world and brings all of these tunes to share with me that I may or may not ever be exposed to. So that it's been really a tremendous thing for me to expand my playing by learning some of these tunes.
Dre shows me music too. He's got all of Attila Zolder's charts. We've played 1 or 2 of those, and Dre knows a ton of standards, some of which I don't know. So anytime we get together, even if we don't have a gig booked, I stay. My lady friend lives nearby here, so I spent some time here. I live on the West Coast, but I try to spend as much time here as I can. So anytime I'm here, I let Dre know. Even if we don't have a gig schedule, I'll come by his house and we'll just take out some charts. And we enjoy sharing music together and trying to learn new tunes. It's fun. I think the most fun way to learn new music is in a shared environment.
Your friendship goes back a ways.
10 years, right?
Yeah,
So we've been playing for a while together. We have some musical history together, and we found right away that we have some common ideas about how the music should be played, especially in this setting of 2 guitars. We've both done a fair amount of this kind of playing.
And there's a show coming up on December 2nd at Main Street Arts.
There is. We have
Correct.
some guests. Dre and I will play a set instrumentally with the 2 guitars, and then we have some guest vocalists who will be joining us in the second half who've done some. My sister, Libby McCauley, here, has done many shows, lead roles and other things for MSA, and so she'll be joining us, and several other good singers, too, who do productions for MSA, so there'll be some vocals in the second half of the show.
And the show starts at 7:30, and it should be an interesting evening of some musical surprises. But I don't have no idea what these vocalists are going to do, and that's exciting to me. I mean, who knows what we're going to do, you know? We'll hope for the best, but it's always, I like that kind of a challenge of, we'll just see what happens.
I think it'll be enjoyable.
And
think so, too.
that kind of embodies an important part of jazz.
It does indeed.
Absolutely. This kind of collaborating on the fly, I think the audience enjoys seeing this. So all 3 of these ladies were recommended by David Stern, who's the artistic director of MSA.
And the new performance space that they've built in the wake of that massive capital campaign, it's pretty sweet.
Yeah, it's very nice. It's
Very nice.
good sound acoustically. There's a nice stage, nice lighting. Dre and I played there once about a year and a half ago, and I've been to a few shows there that my sister has been in. It's a very, very comfortable space.
Yeah, it's a great place to hear music, for sure.
Dre, you're a teacher,
I am. So is John.
but he's way over on the other coast.
He's that's an understatement. Yes, yes. I teach quite a bit. And I love to teach.
I had the pleasure of seeing one of the youth, what's the word I'm looking for?
Ensembles.
Youth ensembles, thank you, that you were teaching, progressing over the course of some time.
Yeah,
Boy, they were good.
they were good. They were good, and I was very, very pleased with their performance. And I'm always looking to do more of that because it's fun.
It's satisfying for us as older musicians to see great young players who are interested in trying to learn this craft, because it is music that not so many people like. So generally it shows the audience is older. So I tell young musicians who are serious about this, please try to introduce your friends to this music, at least help them understand how to listen to it if they don't want to play it, so that you can have an audience too. And most folks will not do this for a living, but it's a wonderful hobby or a part-time avocation. I have some friends, and Dre does too, some of his students probably, who are doctors or lawyers, but they love to play, and they're quite good at it, actually. And they certainly play well enough to play professionally. So jazz is a wonderful thing to do in terms of engaging yourself mentally and physically. And so even if it's not your living, it's a great way to introduce people to certain ways to communicate, to train their minds to react in certain ways. And so we're all for trying to include young players and try to mentor them. Dre and I both enjoy doing this.
That brings up a really important thing just socially, doing art for the love of doing art. But a person's got to put bread on the table, too.
Yes, absolutely.
Are things changing? Have you seen things change over the course of your careers? Is it getting harder?
It has, speaking for myself, gotten a lot harder because I don't travel. So the venues in the area, there used to be so many venues that I was hoping sometimes the phone wouldn't ring. I was that busy, and it just all collapsed. So it's been a challenge, and I think all the musicians in this area, and I can only assume in other areas as well, are looking for other creative ways to keep it going. And so house concerts, spaces like this, and sort of picking up on what you said earlier, what I marvel at is this music is always going to be around, you know. The number of young people that are totally into it. You know, Ellie Guyon,
Yeah.
you know, people and teenagers. These kids are into it big time. So, and they're not even thinking about where they're going to play or how they're going to make a living, or they're not thinking about any of that kind of thing. They just want to play, you know. And that's sort of the energy that I like to. That's what I get back from them, is that energy.
Yeah.
So it's really a great thing.
Is it different on the coast?
Well, I mostly travel. I'm not actually home so much. I live in Portland, Oregon, but I'm on the road about 9 months of the year. So I'm traveling around, some in Europe. I go down to Argentina and then all over the States. And I just put a little network of friends together like Dre that helped me to do this because I have no management and I'm not a famous musician. But I think I tell every young musician, if you want to have the experience to travel a bit and play, if you put a network of friends in place to help you do this, it is possible. Even if you don't want to do it as much as I'm doing it, it's absolutely possible to do it. Dre's done it too. Mm-hmm. So I think, as Dre is saying, you have to be creative these days because venues do come and go, and there are not so many of them. So house concerts, for example, can pick up the slack. There's a woman here that we played for a couple of months ago named Wendy Redlinger, who's been doing these for 20 years in her home. She has a nice big living room, and she's been doing house concerts, all styles of music in Brattleboro for 20 years with a mailing list, and people do come. So I think this is one way to pick up the slack. Musicians are operating their own record labels. Some musicians are curating small festivals. So it is possible to have a creative life in music and not be famous, and most of us are not famous. It doesn't mean to say we can't be trying to expand our audience with the internet and producing recordings. Yeah. CDs don't really make much in the way of income for us, but they're calling cards and they can generate some exposure as far as airplay, building audience share in different markets, some reviews, and a little bit of revenue, and a way to document your playing. So I think the trick doing this over a long period of time is to stay positive, feel like you're still growing creatively, and not get too worn down by the business of trying to be a musician. Because most of us are doing more than one thing. Dre and I both teach and play. Some guys can play in a variety of styles. So if you get a great young student who really is serious, then part of our job also is to try to suggest some possibilities for them in terms of how they make a living. Some folks get into recording or music promotion or something related to the internet with music. Some people find another vocation that they like well enough to generate income from and still have enough time and energy to try to play and have some kind of a musical life. It's a bit tricky, but not impossible.
I dragged you guys deep into a discussion on biz. Sorry about that.
That's okay. I've got one more quick thing to say about that. I'm very, very, very encouraged at what's going on in Brattleboro. I didn't realize that I had no idea that there's a very serious and substantial sort of underground music scene in Brattleboro. There are very few venues, so people are getting very creative down there. Yeah. But it can be anything from rock to jazz, and kudos to the parents, because it's the parents who are actually the people putting these things together for their children, and I think that's a wonderful thing.
Stone Church has come screaming out as a fantastic venue.
Yes.
You mentioned that venue to me.
I
yeah.
did.
And the Boys and Girls Club, the guy from Dave Snyder from Guilford Sound just donated a bunch of equipment so
Excellent.
the kids can perform and
Yeah.
record.
Excellent. So people are stepping up, I think is what we're saying. you know,
Yeah.
to try to fill that void because it is so difficult these days. I think the other problem, as we maybe kind of alluded to, is that there's just not that many venues for young players to try to hone their craft. So this is why some of these things we're talking about are so important for the young players to give them that experience of learning repertoire, interacting together, playing in front of an audience. Super important. It's really not about the money, especially when you're in the beginning trying to get some experience performing.
Right. I got nothing else. Is there anything else we should touch on?
Maybe just to remind folks that we're playing on December 2nd at Main Street Arts in Saxon's River, and we would love to see them there if they can join us, 7:30.
That's it. That's
And thank you for having us on today, Mark. We really
Oh.
appreciate it. We'd love to come back and play for you again in the future.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That would be great. We'd love to have a proper listening event and
Let's do that. We would love it. So the next tune that your listeners are going to hear is an arrangement of a Dave Brubeck classic called In Your Own Sweet Way. And this is an arrangement that I got from a New York guitarist named Ron Afif, great guitarist who's been on the scene for many years in New York. And he turned it into a waltz and also added an additional 8 bars of the intro and the release. So it's a little different than what the audience might expect to hear, but they're going to recognize the familiar Brubeck melody. The other tune is an old standard called You and the Night in the Music, and that's an arrangement in 2 keys that I got from somewhere, and I'm not sure who came up with the modulation, but it's pretty clever. So a musician who's listening might recognize the fact that we're moving into 2 different keys on that one.
Draa Hobbs and John Stowell, thank you both
Thank you
so
very much.
Thanks for having us, Mark.
you.